Welcome everybody to today's webinar. We'll start in about 2 or 3 more minutes to allow everyone to jump on. I want to do a quick audio test here. If someone can just say hi in the chat, just let me know that I'm being heard. Awesome. So while I wait for a few more people to jump on, today's webinar is going to be around using Onshape across platforms. My name is Bradley Sullen. I'm a technical services engineer over here at Onshape. I help a lot of customers in the onboarding process, getting Onshape set up on their company side. And I wanted to use today to really go over some of the things that I've seen around using Onshape on PCs, Macs, mobile devices, go over a few nuances of what to look for if you're in the market for a new device to use, a more modern CAD you might be used to looking for in terms of hardware requirements for things like, older CAD systems out there. Looks like we do have everyone on. This is going to be probably a little bit shorter than other webinars if you've attended any. I'm going to guess maybe 30 to 45 minutes max. I am running solo today, so I'll do my best to answer questions as they come up, but I have a section dedicated at the end for Q&A as we go along. So I think to get started here, just what we're going to cover today is really introducing how Onshape operates. It is a little bit different from what you might be used to in other CAD systems and how we handle the processing of CAD data, how the graphics are rendered, and then actually go into those differences compared to other CAD systems. And then the bigger focus will be the second half here, where we want to cover the factors that influence performance around Onshape. I'm going to stick a little high level here. I don't want to go into too much technical details of, AMD versus Nvidia graphics cards. Really the goal here is to give you a better idea of what factors do influence it, so what you can look for if you're in the market for a new device. And then we'll actually go over some examples. I do have an iPad, an Android phone, and I'm running on a MacBook now. So I'll be showing the screens across those devices, just showing some nuances of what the user interface looks like, how I can, do a company workflow with all 3 devices at once. I'm not going to go into the touch gestures for the mobile apps. Cody, my colleague, did a great webinar going through the specific tool sets and how to use mobile directly, and you can find that webinar on our website. So to really get started here, I want to go over how Onshape works from a higher level. So we are a browser-based CAD system. What that means is the Parasolid kernel is on the Amazon Web Services servers. This is a map that was provided by them for their server locations. We are not on all of them, but really what happens with a traditional CAD system is you are installing a license of the Parasolid kernel onto your actual machine. And this is what does all the math to make the 3D models, whether it's a square or has filleted edges. And then on the second half of this, we then take the graphics information and render it on your device. So it's really splitting the process into 2. We have this large database server provided by Amazon doing all of the model processing. and then the dedicated hardware in your device is actually doing the graphics so that you can see it and spin it on your computer screen. Where this might be different, well, actually, to note here too, this isn't streaming information. So right now I'm showing you my screen through GoToWebinar. That is streaming the visual feed, the pixels from my computer screen to yours. With Onshape, that's not the case. So simply just rotating a model on your screen is not eating up bandwidth to send the information because it's just being handled by the graphics of your computer. So when I'm looking to get a new device for CAD, especially when it comes to Onshape, what does that mean? In the past, asking that question of what's the best workstation was really all about the computer specs and that alone, with things like RAM, are you using 16 gigs or 32 gigabytes, or the graphics card, and is it Nvidia, is it the up and coming or best today graphics card for gaming per se? But with Onshape, it's a little bit different. What I'm used to, I came from the Inventor SolidWorks world, and the biggest question was, okay, I'm getting a new machine to build, or I'm ordering one from a vendor. I need to care about how it's going to work today with my current license, but then I also have to think about the future. Do I need to buy upgrades next year to support the next release? These are things that you don't have to worry about with Onshape. And when we get into things like crashes in the environment, you've probably heard this before from us, but when things like the Parasol kernel does crash, I mean, it does happen. Instead of getting a blue screen of death, because we have it spinning up on Amazon servers, we can actually roll over to another instance, so you're not actually experiencing that or seeing that on your end. So Onshape itself is really utilized and can be accessed through three main platforms. We have the browser-based version of Onshape, and then we have a dedicated app for Android and iOS devices. So these are developed independently, but they all share the same tool sets. They are all used and can be used concurrently, even with the same login across 3 devices at a time if you want, like I'll be showing here. When it comes to using Onshape on the web, we have several different sub-platforms in terms of your operating system. You can have a PC with your Windows or Linux. You can have Mac for iOS, or you can even have your Microsoft Surface Book, which is a little bit of a hybrid because it does have that touchscreen display, or something like a Chromebook. So I really want to go over the nuances of each of these, what to look for in terms of when you're doing performance checks to see if it can be used with Onshape, and really how that impacts what you're looking for. Now, I'm going to be talking about performance in broad terms today. This can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I don't want to get into too much of the technical details in terms of a lag time between pinging and servers. So if you have specific questions or concerns about your setup, don't hesitate to ask in the question space, or even reach out to our support team after this Q&A. Again, I plan on using the last section here specifically to Q&A, so if you have questions, write them in, and we'll be sure to go over those at the end. Now, most people switching to Onshape typically already have a good CAD workstation, so the question becomes, how can I use it to get the most out of using Onshape in a browser? We do provide some really good tools right out of the gate. First off is our browser compatibility check. So if I come into my browser here on the side, so right now I'm in Chrome, I can log into my Onshape account, and we do have a systems check. This is available under the question mark icon. And what this is doing is it checks to make sure, yes, your setup is first of all compatible to handle Onshape, and then what's the performance look like just from the hardware and the data we're seeing. When it comes to using Onshape on the browser, we are utilizing a tool called WebGL that allows the browser to actually render the graphics that our servers are sending to it, so you can visualize it on your screen. Those browsers that support WebGL are things like Firefox, Chrome, Safari. Microsoft Edge does not support this. So if you've ever tried logging into Onshape there, you'll get a little pop-up that says, hey, this is not supported, you might want to try something else. Now, the biggest things to look at here, and you can always walk into a store, pull up this page if you're shopping around for a new device. I've done this a few times in the Microsoft stores or in the Apple stores just to get a sense of, what the newer devices are looking like. The biggest section to look at is your renderer and the performance check. So the renderer is telling you what graphics card Onshape is seeing. So if you have, a custom-built PC, the results I have in that slide I'll return back to is the one I have at home. It's a MSI gaming graphics card. So if you don't see that, that means that the browser isn't seeing that information. And I have a few steps to walk you through to try to resolve that. But just make sure you're seeing the appropriate graphics card for your machine. There are plenty of tutorials online how to check to see through your computer settings what graphics card you're using. On a Mac, it's pretty easy. I can go to the Apple icon and say About to see that information and confirm that they read the same. And then under the performance check, we're getting a sense of how Onshape overall performs for you. This is, again, can be a black hole to get down with a lot of details on what performance means to individual people. But the biggest thing to really look at is the measured triangles per second. Every CAD system really runs off of this. Basically, the models are getting rendered as little triangles so that we can do the math on it to say, all right, if I'm filling in an edge, how is the radius determined, things like that. Now, this Mac, while running GoToMeeting, is reading at 30 million triangles. That's actually really good. But if we scroll back over to my slides here, the PC that I had built is running at 800 million triangles. And so I would say this is the appropriate range you should go for. 800 million is on the way high end side of things. When I'm working with customers, I typically see between that 20 to 300 million triangles that the computer can process for visualizing the models there. So that's a really good range to aim for if you're trying to see if your computer works well with Onshape, or if you want to double check to see what might be causing some performance issues on your end. Now, at the same time here, right, there are a lot of things we can do to help out. A lot of CAD admins out there, or a lot of CAD users traditionally might be used to digging into the operating system settings to help optimize performance here. There are really two main sides that you can look at to help make sure that Onshape's being utilized to its best and fullest and utilizing the tools and hardware your computer has to offer. So from the PC side of things, if you do have a custom-built machine or just a machine bought off the store shelf, make sure that the graphics card is being utilized for your browser of choice. Most times, PC operating systems, whether it's Linux, Ubuntu, or Windows, it'll tend to prioritize installed programs to use that heavier hardware because it's assuming most times correctly that that's the most resource intensive tools. We're browsing, most people are just Googling things or watching YouTube videos, so it doesn't need all those heavy duty resources. So this is a screenshot of my Nvidia control panel. There should be a section somewhere to manage 3D settings where you can make sure to set the browser of choice you're using to be set as a priority for that graphics card so then you can actually see it and utilize it. So if you're not seeing your graphics card pull up on that system check in Onshape, go through these settings, try to make sure that Chrome is seeing that being utilized for it, and then rerun the check after refreshing your browser and seeing if it pops up for you. Now, on the other end of things, Chrome is very picky in terms of the combinations of processors and graphic cards that it's seeing, so it has a big blacklist where it actually says, you know what, we don't think this can work for WebGL, again, which is what drives the graphics through Onshape through the browser. And there is a setting in Chrome where you can actually override this, and it is safe to do for the most part, but it will give you a warning just so they can cover their bases there. So if I go back to my browser and I don't see the graphics card here, I'll go to my settings in Chrome, scroll down to the advanced section, and first of all, make sure that hardware acceleration is being utilized. So it's saying, all right, I'm doing something intensive in the browser. I want to use the best resources available on this machine. Let's go and hit it off. You can then, at the top of your URL bar, go into flags, Chrome://flags. This is where you're going to get into that view where you can actually enable your software to override your software rendering list. This is just saying we trust the GPU combination. We want to utilize it for any WebGL application, so we're good to go. And then if you do end up changing this, you'll just have to relaunch your browser. You can see that pop up in the bottom of my screen there to have it actually be enabled and moving forward. Excellent. Now, also on the PC side, Onshape utilizes really the best and greatest that the software tools we use have to offer. So it is also very important to make sure that everything is always up to date. Windows 7 doesn't support the latest versions of WebGL, where Windows 10 always does stay up to date. So you might see some differences in performance between those two platforms. So that's just something to keep in mind. If, when and where possible, try to keep every piece of software you have up to date in terms of the operating system, the browser version you're using. We do know some companies have stricter standards than others. So we want to be flexible there, but we also want to make sure you know where the impacts might come into play for you. Now, when we get into the Mac side of things, the interface for Onshape is exactly the same. Same controls, it's again through the browser, so I know some people might be used to having either games or programs with different hotkeys and setups across the board. Since we're through the browser, we are operating system agnostic. You don't have to relearn anything as you jump operating systems throughout using Onshape. Now again, right now this was a screenshot I did from earlier today showing my performance all the way in green with a measured triangles per second of 26.7 million. If I come back over here and run it live again for us, we're going to see that the numbers aren't always the same over and over again. Again, this can be a different factor of things, the different programs that I have open, could be using other resources on my machine, if I'm connected to the battery or not, depending on my energy saver settings, could be reducing the load on, say, a more energy consumptive piece of hardware like the graphics card. So we're going to see those results differ across the board. I mean, I'm streaming with the GoToWebinar right now, so that could be causing this to go lower or higher depending on what things are being utilized there. But the biggest thing to keep in mind, right, is just having a graphics card that can handle this kind of work. It doesn't need to be as heavy duty as, say, what you're used to from an older CAD workstation. But it's important to keep in mind that it should be a discrete graphics card. A lot of chipsets nowadays will have an integrated graphics card. So you have your Intel motherboard or processor that also does some graphics rendering. So if you are in the market for a new device, when you're going, say, to the Apple Store, let's actually go in and look at the devices they have to offer now. We're going to come in here, try to buy a new MacBook Pro. And we're going to look at their, nice fancy new touch bar, 13-inch. But the biggest thing to call out is that it has an Intel Iris Plus graphics. So that's an integrated graphics card to the processor. That means you probably aren't going to get good Onshape performance. We definitely prefer discrete, dedicated graphics cards. So that'll be your Nvidia, your Radeon, your AMD. It's a completely separate chip in the device. On the Onshape website to be utilized. So what we've actually seen is if I come back over to, say, my Chromebook results, that you're probably actually going to get about the same performance results on a Chromebook as you would the new 13-inch MacBook Pro. It's just a change they did to try to make the thing thinner, save more space and energy. Their 15-inch does have a discrete graphics card. You'll see that here, the Radeon Pro 55, and it usually has its own memory set as well. So that's something good to keep in mind as well. So when we look at something like using the new 13-inch MacBook versus a Chromebook, since it is an integrated graphics card, you are going to see some difficulty with spinning or loading up more complex or larger assemblies. Now, Onshape still works on these devices, They are still good for, simple concepting, getting it up and running. My colleague Neil Cook has a good video of actually opening up a Chromebook out of the box and getting CAT up and running in under 90 seconds, which again, you just can't do anywhere else. But there are going to be, pluses and minuses and differences across the devices you're using, and they can be, beneficial depending on the use case you have. If you're on the go, just need to look at a quick drawing, by all means, this is perfect for it. But if you're sitting down, going to do a few hours of intensive design on a large machine, you might want to go back to your dedicated station or laptop that you use on a daily basis versus, a Chromebook for the go. As a reminder, we do have the questions and the chat log, so if there's any clarifications anyone wants or has, I'm more than happy to go over those. There is, again, a Q&A at the end for more specific conversation here, but anything on these topics, I'm more than happy to come back to or go over. Now, some of the biggest questions I get when working with customers and what I've been seeing in the forums in Onshape are, well, what about those hybrids, or I have a monitor with a touch screen? Can I use those with Onshape as well? So I've actually done work and demos with something like a Microsoft Surface. There are a few nuances to these hybrid devices or a monitor with a touch screen. Responsiveness in Onshape with using these. The biggest thing to keep in mind is how the touch interface works. With something like the Microsoft Surface Pen, that's actually being registered as mouse event versus a touch gesture. Onshape in the web right now doesn't support that touch interface like our mobile devices do. It only supports the mouse event, so the right click, the click to drag, the middle mouse. So the Microsoft Surface Pen actually does emulate and do the mouse events. They have certain buttons on the thing to right click or just to click and drag on it. I was hoping to be able to show it on the webinar today, but the screen connection wasn't quite working this morning. So the other thing though is the browser still is very flexible to be able to utilize these tools from a touch standpoint, from a pen standpoint. And you can always look for or search up different extensions or programs for the browser. Since Onshape's run in, say, Chrome, you can find a Chrome extension to even change the background color to, say, a dark theme if you want. So don't think you're limited just because of what's there today. We did inherently put it on a browser for that flexibility of control, not only in sharing, but also how you can customize it to your needs. So I think I found an extension to support converting touch controls to mouse events, so I can use like a two-finger click on my screen if I wanted to. But I think the biggest thing is really just web versus how Onshape works on the mobile. Now, we wanted to make two different mobile apps, one for Android, one for iOS. One, because there is no dedicated graphics card to your phone. It's a different type of integrated chipset. And they actually get amazing performance. I've been working with an iPad Pro that sometimes I think is working better than my MacBook Pro. So there are nuanced differences there. Really, when it comes to using Onshape on a mobile device, it comes down to the device you're using and the operating system that it's running, or the mobile operating system that it's running. So if we go to something like our help page in Onshape, right in the very beginning here, we're going to have actually a list of supported OS devices. So every release, every app, every program tends to either drop support on some of the oldest supported devices or show support for the newer ones that are coming out that year. Now, the earliest devices we support include things like the iPhone 5S, iPad Mini 3, iPad Pro. For Android, it's anything running KitKat 4.4. But what we found for the most optimal devices are the newer ones you're going to see, like the iPhone X8 or anything running Android Oreo, and soon the new one that they're starting to beta test now. So on the mobile side, it is a little bit more straightforward. Just, is it a newer device? Yes, no. Okay, then you can expect it to run faster or slower from what you're used to, just based on those stats alone. There's really no system check here because it is, you can't really customize a phone once you buy it at the store from its hardware within it. But let's actually show off Onshape on the mobile side. I wanted to walk through a few scenarios just showing using Onshape across the board here between these different devices. So I do have an iPad. And let's get that unlocked. And I do have a phone here as well. You can see my wife's texting me. So when we get into Onshape for both, on the left side, you're going to see my Android phone. On the right, you're going to see an iPad I have hooked up. The interface is going to be the same. So across Android and iOS, the user interface is exactly the same, just as you would expect it for the web side of things across Windows, Linux, Mac, and Firefox, Chrome, Safari, your pick of choice. So we want it to be very straightforward to easily switch devices. There are a few nuances across the board, however. So when we get into things like Android versus iOS, there will be a few features behind the Onshape web client. So when you see things like, follow me mode or sheet metal, these devices might not fully support it or not, and even between the two. I think my iPad supports follow mode right now, and my Android phone doesn't, but soon will. So those are just some nuances to watch out for, and it's really more of those newer feature sets you'll see available. Now, Onshape on the mobile device, however, is more than just a viewer. So I can actually come into any of my most recently opened models, actually come in and perform a modification to the design. So you're not limited just to spinning it around, adding notes. I can actually come in here, see the feature tree, come in and manipulate it, and even make a modification to the design as we're working. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time going over the details of how to do this. Cody did a great job in his previous webinar showing off those details of actually going through the touch gestures and control here as well. Now, I want to show a combination of all three using Onshape in the browser versus using Onshape across mobile devices here. So first thing to point out is, again, we are a very flexible platform because we are cloud-based in this browser-like device. So from here, we always create unique URLs for every view we're in. Even if I'm doing a search for something like my most recently released part files, so let's do a quick search here. Let's just look for everything, see if I've done anything. This is creating a unique URL. I could bookmark this. So whenever I open Chrome, I can just click on this bookmark, come back to the search result, and almost use it like a live report because it'll rerun and update every day with any new changes or any new releases across the board. At the same time, if I'm using something like a project management tool, let's say something like Trello, I can actually have my engineering projects provide live links to the actual models themselves and even generate something like a QR code on them. So if I'm using my mobile device and I'm either out in the field or on a manufacturing floor or just trying to do a quick check, I can do something like get a QR code scanner, grab that QR code. Again, it's using that Onshape link. All I did was use a Chrome extension to turn a browser URL into a QR code. And then I have an app called Barcode Scanner on my Android device to actually scan that to get the URL. And it's going to open it up in my Onshape mobile app. See if the screen share on my phone died on me. Try that again. There we go. I got too many things open here. We'll give it one more shot because I do really enjoy this. There we go. I see it opening now. It's going to send me to this piston head where I was, taking a quick review of the project. Right now, our outstanding actions were to generate an optimized design and then do testing on that optimized design. So the piston head we were working on, even in my browser here, I can click on that link, open up the channel as well. It's sending me to the version and history of the device. It looks like I'm not actually shared into it, so I can't see it. But if we go back to my mobile device here, with my other user account, I can see the STL model that has been optimized and generated. Again, a pretty cool workflow to see. You know, connecting your project management tool, something like Trello, with your Onshape engineering system. And I didn't need to use any API connection. This is just through using Onshape's URLs, links, copying and pasting them across different sections. And as you saw, the permission settings are maintained through that. I don't have to create a link permission set through our sharing system. I can just copy and paste the link from there, and anyone who's already been shared into that project will have access to it. Those that don't get to see that information. There was a follow-up question to the Onshape on the web. 3D Spaceball in Linux does not work. I do have some information I can share with you there. So after the webinar, I will send that your way. You can expect the 3D Space Mouse to actually work across the different devices. Even on my Mac and Chrome, I have the 3D Mouse Home app here. Let's see if I can get that to open up. And you will see the configuration settings to choose Onshape in the browser. Looks like it didn't want to open up for me. That's all right. Now, on the other side of things, when we're using our mobile devices, this is actually pretty recent with our release of Design Data Management 2.0, when we get into something like a release process with Onshape. So I'm actually going to get out of Onshape on both phones here. And I'm going to go into a brand new project. So let's go to this watertight bulkhead. And I've been doing some work on it in my part studio space, and me as my engineer, Leonard, I'm ready to release this. Both of my managers are Sheldon and Howard, so I need to get them involved in this design space. Let's actually, I have the settings set up so that any broken features will cause issues for me. So I'm going to want to, oops. I'll actually double check what's going on there really quick so that I'm able to push that release. I must be referencing something. Yep, there we go. Beautiful. So I've now fixed that feature. I can see Sketch 5 is now good to go. And I'm ready to push out this release. So what we can do is I can select these parts. Let's just do all 10. I'm just going to do a shift select here, right click, and say release. So now I'm creating a release package as Leonard that I want to send out to my managers, Howard and Sheldon, to actually approve. So this is adding all of the parts I want to look at. Oh, now it's giving me regeneration errors. Let's see what else we can look at here that might be having some issues. Oh, that's fine. I can actually delete these if they're not doing anything. Perfect. And we should now be good to go for this official release. Yep, excellent. So let's go and do that again. I'll select all my parts, add them to the release package. From here, I can do things like my auto part number generation if I haven't already assigned them, confirm that yes, I'm in the correct revision for all of them, and then just add a release name. So this will be a release 1. And in my notes or in my approvers, I'm going to add Howard and Sheldon. This is pulling from the list of people that are part of my company. And then for the release notes, I should say submission for manufacturer. Now, when I submit this, it's going to send notifications to all the users that are being sequestered to approve this release. So we see that push through. We now see both notifications on my phone, and I can choose to go right into it. So tap to view release 1, and we'll do the same thing on the iPad, get a good look on 2 different screen sizes, what this looks like. It sends me right to the release summary, so I can see who's the approvers, if there's any notes, what's going on here. I can choose to drill down into the details, see which parts are being released, and even start to drill down into this design. So maybe I'm out on the road, visiting a client or getting more information, and someone decides to continue to do engineering work while I'm gone, I can still support my team and do that work. And then of course I can open up that document, actually go into that design space, or if I'm good to go, I've already done my checking, I can actually approve that release, all through the mobile device, all through the phone, and then everyone back on the computers in the browser will see that notification, get that alert that the release has been approved, and you saw that pop up, it was pushed successfully. Me as a user, I will also see that notification and say, great, I can continue on the work or ship this off to my vendor. So this was really it on my end. I really wanted to just spend some time going over some of the nuances to what to look for in performance, right? The difference between an integrated versus discrete graphics card. That tends to be the biggest thing to watch out for, especially when getting a new device. If you already have a device and have questions on performance, want to check it, you can use that built-in question mark system check with Onshape. Or if you're having some issues, there are some ways to get around it. Make sure Chrome is seeing your graphics card. Make sure your computer is allowing Chrome to use it. And then also make sure that Chrome is not blacklisting it either. And then as you saw, right, you can use things like that new 13-inch MacBook or that Chromebook, but since they are integrated graphics, you may not want to use it on a larger or more complicated design project. Maybe just use it more for quick checks or drawing views. I wanted to open up the last 10, 15 minutes here just for Q&A. If you guys have any questions around what to look for in terms of best performance in Onshape, or any questions, feel free to type them in there. And I'll be sure to pull them up and look at them. So we have a few coming in now. It's a bit out of this seminar, but how can Onshape deal with .rar files? I know we can import them and just store them. I don't think we can actually open them or translate them into anything. You would have to use another program or tool to actually translate them to something like an actual CAD file. But we can bring them in, store them, just like we can with Word, Excel, PDF, .xt files. But you won't be able to view anything or visualize anything there. It's really just the supported CAD file formats we have. And again, it's okay, there's a lot of context here. That's a good question. All right, excellent. Any other questions across the board here? The one thing I didn't show off across the mobile device in Onshape is that new enterprise functionality set. That is a really fun experience, using it within a company setting and actually running through analytics and going through that process, even on a mobile device. But we do have that webinar actually next week, so keep an eye out for it. This was a great question that just came up. I was waiting for. What kind of internet connection is needed? I specifically strayed away from it because this is actually really useful for Onshape. We don't need a high business class internet connection. Again, we're not streaming data like this webinar, like Netflix, like YouTube. We're not streaming those pixels from my screen or from the Amazon Web Service to my screen. We're sending the CAD data, and then WebGL is processing that CAD data for you to actually visualize it on your screen. If I say click on an edge and fill it, it's not sending all of that model information back. It's just sending that edge information, so that just small subsection of the model, to then get reprocessed and then updated for me to visualize here. So we do have a PDF on hardware recommendations. It says 5 megabits per second on the low end. Even with me on my smartphone here, I tend to go on the mobile hotspot just because I trust my internet connection over, say, maybe out in the field, or if I'm visiting another client's office and they just won't let me on. So I see very good performance along those ends, even if I'm sticking just to the mobile, which is really nice to see. So there are no limitations there on that end. 3G is pretty good to use well. Someone brought up, I use my phone as a mobile hotspot, works fine. And you don't have to worry about it eating up your bandwidth. I personally have a, 3 gigabyte limit. I set an alarm at 2. And I purposely used Onshape for a full month just to see what my utilization was. It was about 20–25% of my other activities. So you can expect it to work pretty well, especially if you don't trust the area you're going into and you want a secure connection. Just tether it to your phone and you'll be good to go. Excellent. Well, it looks like that might be it on questions. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to the support team. Again, that question mark icon in Onshape is very useful, not only for the system checks, but also getting to our learning center, our learning tools, and also getting a hold of us, taking a screenshot of anything you might have questions on, or sharing a document with us if you need help. So don't ever hesitate to reach out there. I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar today, and watch out for the webinar about Onshape Enterprise next week. We'll go over probably some more details on the mobile side for using those tool sets. Thank you all.